What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right. So in this video, I want to talk about Rick Barry. All right. Rick Barry, when I was growing up, was one of the three greatest small forwards to play the game. As a matter of fact, they used to call the three greatest small forwards the three Bs. The three Bs. Rick Barry, Larry Bird, and Elgin Baylor. And to an extent, Elgin Baylor, even though he passed on since then, is still looked upon as one of the all-time great players, usually in people's top 20 to 25. Bird is still in a lot of people's top 5, usually top 10. But Rick Barry has slipped. He slipped. And I think it's a combination of reasons why that's the case. He played in the 70s, for the most part, which is looked upon by some, even though I don't find it to be the truth, is looked upon as some as a down decade as far as talent and in the NBA. It was down as far as economic success in the NBA. Also, Rick Barry played several years in the ABA, which sort of takes away from his NBA luster, his numbers. Also, another part of it has to be it's his own doing in a lot of ways. Rick Barry was the most hated NBA player of his generation. Nobody liked him. Opponents hated him. Officials hated him. Fans, especially outside of the Warriors, hated him. Some of the fans with the Warriors franchise disliked him. The media hated him. He burnt a lot of bridges as far as organizations is concerned, as far as his relationships with other players and media members is concerned. He really did a lot of damage. Hell, a lot of his teammates didn't like him. So over time, there aren't a lot of books written about him. You don't have teammates talking glowingly of him. And so, what happens is people don't really talk much about this guy. But he was, and is, one of the great players of all time. He's the only player ever to lead the NCAA, NBA, and ABA in scoring. He scored more than 25,000 points in his professional career when you combine the ABA and the NBA. He had 4 different seasons where he scored, or averaged, I should say, more than 30 points per game. He was named to 12 All-Star teams, 4 All-NBA first teams, 5 All-ABA first teams. And he was at least respected for his competitiveness and his fierceness and his passion. But the problem is he lacked Michael Jordan's charm. He lacked Magic Johnson's magnetic personality. Even Bird, whose personality could be a little bit flat, Bird at least had certain characteristics to his personality that were, ingratiating. Barry was grating. He just was a solo act in some people's minds. Some people thought he was selfish. Especially when he first came to the NBA, and he was a shooting machine. Rick Barry still has the record for the highest scoring average for a Caucasian player, 35.6 points per game during the 1966-67 season. As a matter of fact, only 3 players have averaged more points per game during the regular season than him. Wilt Chamberlain, Elgin Baylor, and Michael Jordan. But the highlight of his career was that he won an NBA championship in 1975 while averaging 30.6 points per game, which was second in the league at that time behind, I believe, only the great Bob McAdoo. When Barry retired in 1980, he was sixth on the ABA all-time scoring list with 25,279 points. When he retired, his 1,104 career steals ranked 10th, even though he was never looked upon as a great defender. His style of shooting free throws was very, very dated. Granny free throws. It was not the most masculine or cool-looking shot. However, when he retired, he was the best free throw shooter in NBA history at 90%. When you combine his ABA and NBA career, he shoots 89% for his career. So, I mean, he's one of the great free throw shooters of all time. He was born in Elizabeth, New Jersey. He attended Roselle Park High School and then accepted a scholarship to play for the University of Miami. In 1964-65, his senior season, he was the NCAA Division I scoring champion with a whopping 37.4 points per game. Barry started his pro career with the San Francisco Warriors, who selected him in the first round of the 1965 NBA draft. He averaged 25.7 points per game, which was fourth in the league his rookie year, made the All-Star team, was named NBA Rookie of the Year, and earned a berth on the All-NBA first team. In his second season, Pop goes the Weasel. In his second season, 1966-67, Barry scored a career-high 2,775 points and led the league in scoring, as I said before, with an average of 35.6 points per game. On December 6, 1966, of that season against the Knicks, Barry set an NBA record for most free throws made in one quarter when he knocked down 14 free throws. Now, that record no longer exists, but that year he also made the second appearance of his 8 NBA All-Star selections and won the game's MVP award in 1967 after pouring in 38 points. At season's end, Barry had earned a second consecutive selection to the All-NBA first team. The player that now has the record for most free throws in a quarter is Vince Carter with 16. The Warriors won the Western Division that year and took on Wilt Chamberlain's legendary 68-13 76ers team, taking them to 6 games in the NBA Finals before losing. In one of those games in the finals, Rick Barry scored 55 points. His 55 points are the second highest total in NBA Finals history, later tied by Michael Jordan and trailing only Elgin Baylor's 61 for the Lakers in 1962. Barry also had 43 and 44 points in 2 other games of the series. His 40.8 points per game scoring average for the finals was an NBA Finals record until Michael Jordan edged him out in 1993 against the Phoenix Suns, averaging 41 points per game. After 2 seasons in San Francisco, which produced a league scoring title and 2 All-NBA first-team selections, Barry attempted to jump leagues and signed with the Oakland Oaks of the ABA. A court dispute over his obligation to the Warriors sidelined Barry for the entire 67-68 season, but he did join the Oaks for the 68-69 campaign. The ensuing public fuss did not reflect well upon Barry. His league jumping was perceived by fans as being driven by greed, even though other players were also taking advantage of the opportunities provided by the upstart ABA. Barry made an immediate impact on the fledgling league, leading the Oaks to the ABA championship in 1969 and finishing second to Indiana's Mel Daniels for the ABA Most Valuable Player Award. Although a knee injury limited him to 35 games, Barry averaged 34 points per game to become the first player to win scoring titles in both leagues. At season's end, Alex Hannum, his coach, was named ABA Coach of the Year. Before the start of the 1969-70 season, the Oakland team announced plans to move to Washington and change its name to the Capitals. Rick Barry didn't want any part of that. He was quoted in Los Angeles Times as saying, "If I wanted to go to Washington, I'd run for fucking president." Instead, he tried to recross the bay to the Warriors and the NBA. Once again, he wound up in court, where he was ordered to honor his ABA contract. After one season in Washington, the Caps moved again to become the Virginia Squires. Barry made some comments to sports writers about Virginians. Quote, "I don't want my son coming home saying, 'Howdy, y'all.'" Fuck you, Rick Barry. Fucking jerk. I'm an asshole in the head. I'm an asshole in the head. And he was soon dealt to the New York Knicks. Somehow the tumult settled down and he averaged 29.4 and 31.5 in 2 seasons with the Nets. Barry's 4 seasons in the ABA produced 4 All-Star selections, a championship, and an ABA scoring title, but his 7 seasons in professional basketball had landed him in 2 leagues with 3 different teams in 4 different cities, and in court twice. Barry said later on, "If I had to do it over again, I'd wait for some other fool to do it." The saga wasn't over for Barry, although he had become comfortable with the Nets of the ABA. Mind you, this is the New York Nets at the time. A court decision forced Barry to return to the NBA's Golden State Warriors for the 72-73 season. Upon his return to the NBA, he was a different, better player. For one thing, he had bulked up by about 20 pounds so that he could muscle with the NBA's big boys when he had to. He also had developed his ball handling and passing ability since his earlier years in the NBA. After his return to the NBA, Barry experienced the longest period of stability in his career. He played 6 more seasons with the Warriors, and they made the playoffs 4 times. In 72-73, he averaged 22.3 points per game. He also earned the first of 6 NBA free throw percentage titles. A perennial all-star, he began a string of 6 more mid-season appearances and nabbed the first of 3 consecutive All-NBA first-team selections. The first 2 honors he had won in 66 and 67. Barry boosted his scoring average to 25.1 points per game in 1973-74. He had his greatest scoring night on March 26, 1974, against the Portland Trailblazers. In the first half, he was merely hot with 19 points. In the second half, however, he lit the Blazers up, hitting 21 field goals for 45 points. Barry's 64-point total was his career high and made him, at the time, only the 3rd player to go over 63 points. Chamberlain had done it 15 times, Barry twice. In that game, Rick Barry shot an incredible 30 of 45 from the floor. Although he was a scoring machine when need be, by this time Rick Barry had transitioned to becoming more of an all-around player. The new Rick Barry was passing, ball handling, being more of a vocal leader. He wasn't just a guy going out there driving to the basket, mid-range, scoring. He was also becoming a much improved outside shooter, even though there was no 3-point line at the time. One of the most amazing feats in NBA history was the Golden State Warriors winning a championship in 1974-75. That year, as I said earlier, he averaged 30.6 points, led the league in free throw percentage at 90.4, and steals at 2.85 per game. He was also 6th in the NBA in assists with 6.2 points per game, the only forward to make the top 10. This was not the greatest roster in the world. The 74-75 roster did include Rookie of the Year, Keith Wilkes, later to be known as Jamal Wilkes. But other than that, it was not a star-studded roster. And unlike a lot of teams in the 70s where the style of play was similar to the Boston Celtics of Bill Russell's time, or the Lakers with the Lakers with Wilt and West and Goodrich, or the Knicks teams in the 70s, it was more of a scoring by committee thing. Most championship teams at the time, there would be four guys averaging at least 15 points a game in the starting lineup. That wasn't the case with the Warriors. Rick Barry routinely took more than twice as many shots as his next most talented teammate, and that being Wilkes. Barry did a lot of heavy lifting for that team. And to me, when you consider the quality of the opponents that they had, the 61 Bullets team and some of the other teams that they played, I think that's one of the most difficult championship runs ever. Rick Barry would go on to play several more years, transitioning to becoming more of a role player, jump shooter. But his scoring would go down as the years go on. 75, 76, he averaged 21 points a game. In 76, 77, he averaged 21.8. 77, 78, he averaged 23.1 points per game. And then he played with the Houston Rockets, and his scoring dropped from 23.1 to 13.5. And then the next year, he averaged only 12 points per game. And I believe that was his last season. I do believe in his last season, 79-80, he had a game where he hit 8 of 14 three-pointers, which was incredible for that era. But after he retired, he had scored 25,279 points. And in the playoffs, he averaged 24.8 points per game in the NBA postseason and 33.5 points per game in the ABA. And he went into the Hall of Fame, Basketball Hall of Fame, in 1987, along with Walt Clyde Frazier, Bobby Wanser, and Pete Maravich. And just want to do a little video about him, man. Rick Barry, an acquired taste. Not everybody's cup of tea, but definitely one of the all-time greats.